it to the post of.
The issue we need to look at is the mythology of different races. That's what brought them here. When we look back in history, we will realize that the invention of the notion of different races was created by Europeans to justify colonial conquest and dispossession of people being looked at. Observe academics, they were a minority, but they were there with a very strong voice, fighting for academic freedom, particularly in the university where I ended up ultimately as its president or vice chancellor. So the silence of American academia in the light of what the Trump administration was doing and proposing to do more of oppression in the village where we lived, where people were punished for Domini, or the pastor said she can't be buried in the church yard, the grave of the church. And so there was an uprising in my village, and people were very badly beaten. A group of young people, we were not more than 15 of us, asking fundamental questions of their society. Because oppression and repression and dominant systems continue because there are questions, that they normalize the abnormal, and we punch at that so-called normality. And Steve's gift was he was an extremely brilliant young man and had been forced by his mom to come to medical school. He wanted to be a lawyer. So he was not really interested in his medical studies. So when these questions arose, that was really what excited him. And so he ended up being the inspirational leader. And the minute we made this connection, we first of all changed the name of our medical school from being the non-white section of the University of Natal to the black section of the University of Natal. And then he undertook, and successfully did so, traveling from campus to campus where there were black students and mobilizing. And in the end, we had the same university that had been calling us non-whites, now having changed to black, funding that conference because they thought that we were buying into the apartheid divide and conquer business. And so the Black consciousness movement succeeded in mobilizing people because it focused first and foremost in self-liberation. Once your spirit is free, no one can silence you. And the silence of people in a repressive system is either because of just fear, for others, it's fear of losing what they have. Like as young people, we have nothing to lose except you become a shining light. And that's what we were. We were young, we were very poor, but we didn't feel like we lacked anything. We knew that the future could only be bright, but that we had the capacity to shape that future, to become the future that we would like to be part of. But we're in the liberation struggle. Two different
What's the
ways.
difference between
The difference is one is against a system, the other is for
reform?
Shaping, not reform, transformation. Shaping a society that would have the values of Ubuntu or living systems values, whatever, however we define it, but the values that are fundamental to what it means to be human. That our ancient and their common ancient ancestors, because all of us here are Africans, our common ancestors worked out these values by observing how nature works. That in nature, everything is connected to everything else. And as human beings, we are interconnected and interdependent. And so we're not fighting against white people. We're fighting against a system that divided us. And therefore, when Mandela started negotiating, we said, that's the way to go. But where the mistake was made was the post-release negotiations before 1994 neglected to look at a free South Africa is not just free, should not just be free politically. We use the metaphor of Africans cooking these pots with 3 legs. There are 3 legs in a pot. So the political liberation is one, and then you need the socio-economic liberation. And then the third one, and it's important, it's still important today, even in your country, is the healing of what has happened. Because you can't just stand up after 400 years of oppression and you think you can just walk out and you're a free person and everything will be hunky-dory. That's why my
So it was supposed to start the negotiations, and then de Klerk continued it. What was the view from activists like you? Were you aware of the negotiations going on with Mandela in prison? If you saw this proceed, were you hopeful? Were you optimistic? Were you fearful? What was the sort of the mood of the activists?
Many of you might remember that June 16, 1976 was the uprising in Soweto, led by young students, were high school students, whom we had mobilized. So we actually saw that this thing works. When people are mobilized to believe that they are worthy of dignity, respect, and they have the power to shape the future.